what is family and how our I'll say the United States, at least, because that's what I know, thinks about society. When we talk about having a family, people are talking about having a spouse and children, right? And there are some of us who that's not what it looks like, but that doesn't mean I don't have a family.
Hello, welcome back to You Need a Counselor podcast. This is episode 113. My name is Dr. Julie Johnson. I am the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions in Iowa. We are still offering outpatient mental health therapy and outpatient behavioral health therapy for children and behavioral health counseling. That is an in-home service in any of our 6 office locations, but we're also offering telehealth for anywhere in the state of Iowa for that behavioral health service for children and also for adults, families, couples, adolescents, any age for that outpatient telehealth therapy.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt. I am the vice president at Heart and Solutions. So I'm in charge of that BHIS department that Julie was just talking about, where we go in home and work with children ages 4 through 18 and their families on different behavioral skills. We can also see them in the office, in school, and telehealth right now as well. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
So we post on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Central. There's a new episode every single Sunday night. So we encourage you to batch up your laundry or whatever horrible task you hate doing. Go ahead and save all of that for Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Central. Chrissa and I will be putting away our clean clothes into outfits for the week so that we have clothes to wear for the week. If you prefer to do your meal prepping or anything else that's just really going to give you a head start on the week, do that on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. with us. That gives you that entire week to get scheduled with your counselor, if you haven't seen your counselor in a while, to get set up with a counselor, or to get connected with our guests from that week and any of the resources that they provide. So Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Our guest today can offer you therapy if you are in Colorado. It also can offer you life coaching anywhere in the world. She is a licensed clinical social worker and specializes in supporting those who are childless, but not by choice. And I love this designation, the not by choice designation. I'm excited to hear about that. So we want to welcome Carrie Brauninger to the show. Thanks for being here, Carrie.
Hi, thanks for having me. I love your tips for the week.
Thank you. It's important to me personally to put away outfits for the week. This past Sunday, I was not able to do that. And so it is the day before St. Patrick's Day right now. I am wearing a St. Patrick's Day shirt because I was not able to put away my clothes and my outfits for the week. And it just threw the whole thing off. So yeah. I also never want to have to put away clean clothing on a Thursday. That just is a waste of a Thursday. So welcome to the show. Now, tell us about this distinction, childless, not by choice. I love this distinction. Tell us more about it.
Yeah. So, I think first of all, I think most people kind of walk around assuming that, women have children. And then I think most people walk around with an assumption that if women don't have children, that it was their choice. Mm-hmm. And there's this whole group of us that absolutely wanted to have kids, planned on having kids, expected to have kids, tried to have kids, maybe even did things to increase the likelihood that they would have children. But for whatever reason, and a host of reasons, that didn't work. And so when we talk a lot about childlessness, there is a specific type of grief that comes with that. There's a specific type of mourning and coping around childlessness, not by choice. And I myself found myself childless, not by choice, and really kind of struggling with where to get resources, feeling understood, feeling seen. And so that's what brought me to specialize in this niche.
Awesome. So in your life coaching and therapy, do you work with that population? Is it specifically more in coaching? Or how do people get involved in that if they are also childless, not by choice?
Yeah, good question. So, I would say in therapy, uh, depression and anxiety, definitely, I think, or complicated grief, I think is a piece of that. So in therapy, I would touch on those, treat those. We would kind of start there. In coaching, and people are really coming to me when they're not meeting criteria for a mental health diagnosis. It's not so debilitating that it's impacting, right, their ability to get along with others, go to work, take care of themselves. And so in the coaching, it's really about, okay, you feel like you're in the place where you're starting to accept it. Now, what do you want the next steps to look like? So it's more future oriented and action steps. Therapy, we may process a lot about what got you to this spot and how traumatic that was.
I love that you identify that need for understanding when we are in this position. There are so many assumptions about women, and there are so many assumptions about why somebody might be childless. And people make statements all the time to us that say, well, when are you going to have a baby? You've
Right.
been married this long. When are you going to do? You better get on that. You're not getting younger. And those kinds of statements are so painful because it's not acknowledging the fact that, no, I have been trying for the last 4 years. I have had 3 miscarriages over the last 4 years. My partner, there's mental health concerns where they are not able to parent a child in a healthy way. Or I might have mental health concerns or physical concerns. That means that I'm not able to do that and maintain my own mental health or my own physical health. And I think that all of these things that are such painful experiences just get very invalidated in our society when people say, well, do you just not like kids? Well, no. Do you just not,
Right.
Is it just because you want to have freedom? No, that's not what it is for people who are childless, not by choice. And so I love that you are identifying that, no, we're not alone in that. We're not the only ones, but because there's this idea out there, it can feel like we're the only ones.
Yes, and I talk a lot about kind of why that is. And one is, I think, for some people, there's a lot of shame and embarrassment around not having children because the message that we're sent is this is something that you should be doing. And if you don't have children, then there's something wrong with you. Um, Another piece of this is as much as the people around us love us and want to support us, there's not a societal handbook in terms of how to do that, right? When we talk about other forms of grief, while we may not all be stellar at acknowledging somebody's grief when somebody passes away, we at least have some roadmap that we can follow, right? I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm going to come bring food over to you. There's cards that can indicate you're thinking about this person. And when we talk about grief related to childlessness, not by choice, it's a non-event. It's something that didn't happen. And so people don't typically know, A, that it's occurring, B, what to do about it or how to support somebody if they do acknowledge it. And because many of us, if we start to dip our toe in to try and get some support, again, not because the people around us don't want to love us and support us, but they don't know how. And so it's stumbly, it's fumbly. And sometimes we get to a point where we're like, I'm just going to keep this in because when I say it, I can feel the air getting sucked out of the room. because it's not what people are expecting.
What are some of the suggestions in that you do give to people to confront people who are childless, not by choice? Because like you said, it is very hard to know. I remember we were just at the Mall of America for my birthday a month ago, and one of the cashiers was like, "Oh, how many kids do you guys have?" And we were like, "Oh, we don't have any kids." So it's
Right.
just like it's such an awkward thing because people, yeah, they just assume that you do. So what do you suggest that people do say in those situations?
Yeah, I would say asking the question, me personally, and what I talk with clients about, it's a get to know you question. People aren't trying to be invasive, right? It's on like the annoying side, like in the same way that like, what do you do for work? If you're unemployed, like well, I do a lot more than just work, but it is a societal question that people ask. Um, and what I talk to people about is don't rescue the person when they start to fumble. Just say no and leave it at that. And generally the other person will work themselves into changing the conversation, right? Um, and then for those people who are asking the question, just think about it before you ask a question, like something like that, right? Because not even related to childless, not by choice, but sometimes people have children that pass away and things like that. So just recognize that you may be dipping into a topic that could be difficult for somebody, and just have an awareness. So then when they respond, if it's not the panned yes, and now you guys can go in and talk about how you all relate as having children. If it's just be prepared for that answer to throw you. Um, and then I talk to people about talking to their supports about not problem solving. It's not a problem to be solved. And I think that's when you talk with women who are childless, not by choice, because people are responding because they were thrown off by the answer, then they start trying to make awkward jokes about it, or they start problem solving, or start talking about their aunt who didn't have kids and then some miracle happened, right? And we laugh because it's like so stereotypical, but I kid you not, it's happening. Like every woman who is childless not by choice has these stories to tell. So if you're someone who's trying to support somebody, just be in the moment with them. Don't try and solve it. You won't be able to. You won't be able to solve it.
Such a great suggestion as the receiver too, to the not rescuing, the not trying to make it more comfortable when it's not a comfortable question that we've been asked. And it's not our job to make it comfortable for the other person, because it did not make it comfortable for us. And so it's fine to take opportunity to educate people in those situations, but it's not our job to. We don't have a responsibility to educate them, to explain our situation, to explain what's happening. We don't have to do that. We can choose to do that, or we can choose not to do that. But we don't need to rescue that person. I get that a fair amount. People assume things about me based on how I look, my ethnicity. It's such a great suggestion, because I do follow that. I don't rescue people when they ask me weird questions.
Yeah.
Be what it is, and if they feel awkward about it, that's a natural consequence of asking something weird.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I love that suggestion.
Yeah, I think when I was in the depths of my own grief around this, not that I don't have moments of grief around it, but when I was like, oh my God, the universe did me this way. When I was sort of in that, and people ask if you have children, and I would say no, you can see and feel it get uncomfortable really quickly. And I used to try and jump in and, oh, it's okay. Or, tell me about your kids, or, try and kind of make that awkwardness go away. And I've pivoted off of that now, where this is my temperament, where I'm not trying to make somebody feel like a jerk. Because for most people, it's a genuine question that they're asking, and there's just no representation out there. So for many women, it's literally not occurring to them that I don't. And so now I just say yes, and then I let the silence sit, and I let them feel the awkwardness.
Absolutely. And I think that goes back to what you talked about before, getting through, processing through this idea that I should feel ashamed, or I should feel embarrassed, or I should feel like I'm doing something wrong, but if I don't have a child. And what you're talking about is being on the other side of that shame and responding to it as, no, I'm not doing something wrong by not having a child. I can say, no, I don't have any children, and I don't have to justify them to anybody because I don't have to be embarrassed by it. So I think that is so beautiful. And I'd love to hear more too about grief, because you talked about how this is a very specific type of grief and coping. And it's not one that people can understand or necessarily understand naturally until they try to understand. There's effort that goes into understanding most things, but this is very specific. And so there is, I think, sometimes having people understand us, but then there's also that component of grief that comes from the people who are trying to support us. I think one thing that makes it so challenging to be childless by choice, or not by choice, is that the people around us, our loved ones, our siblings, our parents, our in-laws, are also going through a grief process because they expected to be an aunt, they expected to be a grandmother. And so they have this idea in their mind that they're also losing, and we're going through our own, and then that complicates that grief and makes it more difficult for them to support us because they're going through their own grieving process. Do you see that in families and those systems? And how do you help somebody work through those things?
Yeah, I definitely see. I mostly work with, I mean, I think I've only worked with women. I don't exclusively work with women, but that's just who I think is reached out. But definitely a feeling of letting everyone down, whether that's a spouse, if they're married, if it's something related to their health or a million other things, or they're older. Again, when you talk about parents and trying to navigate, people asking those questions in a way because they want grandkids, but that's not going to happen. Things like that. It's very complicated. There, again, like you said, there's the grief of those around you that aren't going to happen. I will tell you that from my experience, the experience that I see, the grief is such a depth is so overwhelming that I think that is something that comes a little bit later, is recognizing that, oh, these people around me also have some identities or labels that they're not going to be able to access through me. And so, it's interesting you bring that question up because it's not a question that I've asked anybody in my family. And I think for me, I guess I've made an assumption here that, I have a brother and sister. And so everybody has those things. And so it feels a little bit more isolating for me. So that's the lens in which I felt it and how the people I've worked with have felt it. But yeah, I would encourage anybody who's going through grief to seek out some therapy and seek out some counseling in order to help not only themselves, but be able to support those around them who are also going through it.
Mm-hmm. And you have an Instagram community that you mentioned to us as well called Sonder Sisterhood. Can you give us some background on what you post in there and what that is for?
Yeah, so I have an Instagram handle, and then I've just started a YouTube channel along with that. And what we do is it's specifically for single and childless women, just kind of a subset within the childless not by choice community. I work with anybody who's childless, not by choice. This particular one is for single. There's just an added layer of crap, quite frankly, that comes along with being single and childless, for all the reasons that we just talked about in terms of societal expectations of women. But I digress on that for now. But what I do is we do monthly like workshops. We do monthly social hours where if you want to spruce up your social life and come hang out with a group of women who are single and childless, we've done things like play games. I also have a book club that we do as well, all for single and childless women people, to come in and just be around others, to feel seen, supported, and heard. And we're talking about things in a way that's relevant to us. And then I also put out a lot of content. This topic is really meaningful to me, important to me. And so I put out a lot of free content, particularly on the YouTube channel, just about how to cope, mindset, validation, things like that.
So important to have that support of other people who are experiencing similar things that we are, so that we know that we're not alone. It's not us. It's not a problem of us. It's not, oh, I'm wrong. I'm a person who something's wrong with me. No, I am part of this community of people who are experiencing these challenges due to external factors, not due to what we're doing, but due to societal pressures and societal ideals and ideas and understandings. So I think that is a beautiful way for everyone to connect. And it does make me think about single and childless in men versus women. And gosh, we think about George Clooney or Leonardo DiCaprio, right? And the image we get is like, wow, that guy has a great, he's a ladies' man or whatever it is. And stereotypes or words that come with being a woman in that situation. And we hear all of those other terms like, I don't know what, like spinster, sister, whatever it is, those ones. Those are challenging and those are very damaging labels, but it's what, as a society, those are kind of those ideas that come to mind. We don't have, like you said, we don't have enough representation models of people who are female and single and childless, whereas we have the George Clooney's and the Leonardo DiCaprios of the world on the male side. How do you see those differences playing out for your clients, and what challenges do they experience because of that?
Yeah, it's why I do a lot of mindset content. It's shame, the shame and embarrassment, feeling like a failure, feeling undesirable, unwanted. It's where all of that is rooted from. Feeling pitied. It's exactly where the idea of when I tell people, when they ask me, do you have children? And I say no, and I can feel the air get sucked out of the room. It's because it's because there's pity. There's pity that now comes in the room, like, oh, and while I am childless, not by choice, I can't stand that. And I think for men of a certain age, I think there is envy. So when we think about women, I think women feel sorry for or pity women who are childless. In their heart of hearts, I think they have moments where they're jealous, but, I think that I have moments where I'm jealous of them. So that's just natural human nature. I think for men, they're seen as sexy. Other men are envious of this Playboy life that they have. And P.S., they may not be having the Playboy life, right? And P.S., they also go through grief related to childlessness. And I think in terms of the representation, the way that it is seen, the way that we read about it, that we hear about it, that we watch about it, it is very much weighted toward the sad single woman who's coming home for the holidays, in the, New Hampshire town. I don't know why I said New Hampshire. I think because I'm envisioning the Hallmark movies.
Hallmark movies,
in,
yeah.
like, these snowy, these snowy areas. And, they are all sad, but then their whole movie is about, finding a partner and living happily ever after. That's what is out there. We talk about, well, Chelsea Handler isn't childless, not by choice, to my knowledge. Look at what happened to her when she went out there and talked about some of the benefits or things that she likes about being childless. I mean, there were news segments talking about how bitter she was and how these bitter, lonely women who can't get any Bumble dates are like running the country. And that's why, because, there are some women in power that don't have children. And there's a certain segment that's going after that as if that's a character flaw and a reason why they're not like you. And all of that seeps in. I'm going on a rant, I know, but this all starts very young. Very, very young.
We love a rant.
Yes.
The show, especially something that is so important, that impacts so many people, and where people don't have the voice. People are not given that voice, and we don't have that representation that is accepted in the media, right? There's all of these negative stereotypes and challenges that come to those who are childless, either by choice or not by choice.
Right.
Both situations. We've had a previous episode, the host of the One and Done podcast, Only You, a One and Done podcast, where she talks about her choice to only have one child and how challenging that is as well. And so I think, overall, it is challenging when we make decisions that go against what people think we should do or what they want us to do. And when we do the things that, when we are happy in our lives, whether we chose that life or not, when we're happy in that life, when we have acceptance of that life, when we are thriving in that life, people don't like that. Society does not like that. They don't like that because they want to try to get us to do the things that they want us to do. You talked about how that pity that sometimes comes in society and how it stems from the idea that it's a failure to be single or to be childless. And if that is a failure, then it comes from the idea that success is having children and getting married. And you talked about how it made me think of Hamilton. I love Hamilton. And Angelica Schuyler, and she says, I'm a woman in a world where my only job is to marry rich. And that always sticks with me because as women, there is this expectation that that's what success is, to be married, to have children. And only with that idea in place can there be a failure. And so we need to challenge that idea that is success, that that's the finish line. And you talked about movies. How many movies is the happy ending True Love's Kiss? The happy ending is she finds her prince. And I have noticed lately with Disney how well those circumstances are kind of being challenged, and that end goal is being challenged lately versus the movies that we grew up with, where it was like, well, they're gonna get married and have babies and everything's happy, and that's the goal, that's the ending. Whereas, gosh, Frozen really was revolutionary in that, because yes, there was a love story and there was another love story, but the main love story of that movie is between these two sisters. Mm-hmm. And that is the movie. And Frozen kind of pokes fun at the idea of like, we're getting married, and then they're like, yeah, you just met him. What are you doing? And Encanto too. At the end of Encanto, the suitor who, you know, it was supposed to be Isabella's suitor, and there was this arranged marriage, and he gets connected with the other cousin, and he says at the end of the, let's get married. She says, slow down. I love that. Because these are the happy ending in that movie. It is about relationships. But that movie Encanto, that relationship is the family relationship. It's the generational relationships happening within that family, and not that romantic relationship. And I think that when we grow up where those familial relationships are not as strong, or not as healthy, or not as or not meeting our needs as much as they could be when we were children, there's a societal tendency to try to go, well, I'm going to find that in my partner. I'm going to find that in my partner. I'm going to find that in my children. Whereas really what the true healing for them is not to, well, I'm going to, you know, create more people that will love me in the way that I want, right? Or I'm not going to make my husband or my wife or my partner or myself, I'm not going to make them my solution to being able to be loved the way that I need to be. I'm going to do things, change things for myself. I'm going to love myself the way that I need to be. I'm going to set expectations for everybody around me, no matter what their relationship is to me, my coworkers, my book club friends.
Yep.
I'm going to have those expectations for every relationship in my family, that this is how I will expect to be treated, and this is how I expect to be loved. And so being able to in those kinds of movies, especially in Encanto, to be able to say, oh, the happy ending is this healing that happened within those relationships that were already established, versus I'm going to go create what I find to be a healthy relationship with somebody else.
Yeah, I think you bring up the point too of what is family, and how I'll say the United States, at least, because that's what I know, thinks about society. When we talk about having a family, people are talking about having a spouse and children, right? And there are some of us who that's not what it looks like, but that doesn't mean I don't have a family. And when the message is this is what a family is, it can feel very isolating. And so some of these movies that are out there that kind of expand what that means to have supports and family. You know, I think some of the younger generations talk about the chosen family, which I think is really healthy. I think they do that a lot of times in the context of trauma. But again, expanding what it means to be an adult and who your family is.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned you had a great counseling experience. Can you kind of talk about that?
Yeah, I still see her. You know, it was funny, like, maybe like 2 months ago, she started to like talk about when we would see each other again. And I was like, you're not breaking up with me, are you? I was like, oh no, I need to figure that out. But no, so I have an interesting experience with a counselor. She's a LMFT, and I started seeing her like 5 or 6 years ago. I think when I was starting to, my dad had passed away. I was going through, well, my dad had passed away like 10 years ago, but I'm an avoider. And so I started to sort of feel that a little bit more later. And I was going through like work and all of this. So I started to see her. We started to talk a little bit about some grief and things like that. I definitely brought up the fact that I'm freaked out. I'm not going to have kids. It's like the worst thing that could happen to me, you know, all of that. And we started to get into it a little bit. And then, you know, I dipped out. I left. I ghosted her. And I just couldn't. I just couldn't at that time. She wasn't pressing me. But I could not accept the fact that this might not happen. Like that I had no resources or role models, or I just couldn't go there. And then maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I think turning 40 was like a cliff where I was like, oh crap, this is not going to happen. So I got to deal with this. I was in a different space. And so restarted with her, and it's been, it was helpful because she knew me and she can call me on my crap because she knew what I did before. And, but it's been really, really helpful. She has children, so it's not as if you need somebody who doesn't have children to help you through this. I think she does an exceptional job, though, of seeing me, probably because she knew me a little bit before too. But just somebody to talk to about it and get vulnerable around, which isn't my strong suit, but it's where a therapist can be really helpful.
Yeah, no, I love that example, because it can feel like when we're starting out with therapy, it can really feel like, nope, I'm not. And then we can get down on ourselves because we can go, oh, I just wasted that money, or I just wasted that time, and therapy's not for me. And I love your role modeling here, because that at that time might not have felt helpful, but then later going back and having that kind of anchor point, right? Like those journal entries basically in this person from however long ago, and being able to have somebody who's known you and has been beneficial. So I love this, because you're able to look back on it, and when we're in it and we're feeling like this isn't working, I'm not ready, I'm not whatever it is, it can feel like, oh, this is never going to work for me. And I love your story, because it still was beneficial. So I love that. I also love that you're modeling that you ghosted your therapist because you're overwhelmed. So this is so common. And then people are like ashamed of that too, a lot of times, or they're like, oh, I feel bad now, I can't talk to that person. And I love what you're role modeling with your story, because you ghosted that therapist, you were overwhelmed, you were not in a place to be processing the things. And then you went back, and you didn't let that ghosting stop you from continuing that relationship. And so I love that. I love being able to have that example of that is possible. It's not only possible, it's a wonderful. And so I think that for anybody who is in the position, we've had guests on before too, they've talked about like, well, I just ghosted a therapist, so now what I did. And
I'm back.
We can go back. And therapists are not upset about it. They're not offended by it. If that is their job, they know that it's not necessarily them. It's either maybe it's not a good fit, or maybe it's just not the right time in my life to be thinking about these things or processing these things. So I love that, because with those kinds of challenging things comes that desire to avoid, comes that desire to like hide and not deal with it. And so I love your example of we don't have to let that tendency or that desire for safety stop us from going back when we are ready. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. And she was the right fit. That was the only space I had. And it's part of why, we are doing Sonder Sisterhood, is to have more than just that 1 hour a week space where you can feel that, because when you open up in that space or process in that space, for me, it's a little hard to glue it back together for, all the other hours of the week. And so to try and just sort of create that a bigger amount of hours in your week where you can feel that. But yeah, I was nervous reaching back out to her. I said, I don't know if you remember me. And she's like, oh, I remember you.
I love that. It's that ability to be seen at our most challenging times, seen in our most challenging trades or our most challenging coping skills or strategies, to be seen in that, and to have somebody still accept us and still validate us and still that is such a beautiful thing. So yeah, if you're listening to this and you ghosted your therapist, it's okay. They understand. They don't think it's because you hate them and they're a terrible person.
They've probably done it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, I love that. Wonderful. So if you are in Colorado and you are looking for mental health therapy through telehealth, gosh, telehealth is amazing.
Yeah.
You can get connected at theotherpathcoaching.com. Or if you are anywhere in the world and looking for coaching over telehealth, then you can also go to theotherpathcoaching.com or on social media, you can look at The Other Path Coaching. And I love that you identified that difference where, okay, I am childless, not by choice. I'm single, either by choice or not by choice. I feel like this might be a good fit, but what is therapy and what is coaching? And I love that you highlighted that difference and said, okay, am I looking at moving forward, setting goals for myself, trying to process, now what do I do? Coaching. Is this impeding my day-to-day life? My ability to get the things done that I want to do, the ability to take care of myself, the ability to build and maintain healthy relationships in my life. Likely, that's going to be the therapy route if you're in Colorado.
Yeah, the only other thing I would say about that too is that I don't switch in between. So if we start in one lane and it looks like it's a different lane, then I would help refer you out to somebody different versus me switching lanes with you.
Perfect.
Just to
Very
keep a really
ethical.
clear boundary.
Yeah.
Very ethical boundaries. And it is challenging because not everybody understands the difference between therapy and coaching. And so being able to explain that, but also being able to say, I'm Carrie and I can be one of these for you. I cannot be both. Right. Is a very, very ethical boundary and a great thing that you're communicating to any new client that might come to you. So if you are looking for an Instagram community, if you are single and childless, not by choice, check out Sonder Sisterhood on Instagram, and you'll be able to get connected with all of the events. The book club thing sounds awesome. I love a book club. So that sounds just really, really cool and just a great way to get to know other people in your same situation who might have better understanding too of those unique challenges and that unique grief, that unique coping that's happening. So go check out that sisterhood as well. So Carrie, if you could give one suggestion about somebody who might be on the fence about starting counseling or about starting coaching, what suggestion might you give them?
Yeah, I would say to try it. You don't have to stick with it if it's not for you. If it's too difficult, you can process that with the person. When we talk about, mental health is health, and you don't have to suffer in silence. You don't have to suffer alone. I also kind of talk about therapists are kind of like teachers where just because you had one bad experience with a therapist or a therapist didn't click, it doesn't mean that the next one won't. It's a lot of temperament and personality fit. And so to just don't give up and to keep trying. And I know it's a real pain in the butt to find a therapist right now because everybody is full. If you aren't sure where to go, try your primary care doctor. That would be my tip. A lot of primary care doctors either have therapists in their clinic or they know people in your area. Okay, I'm Carrie Brauninger and I need a counselor.
Awesome. Me too. So does Chrissa.
Yeah.
I love when counselors see counselors. I love when coaches see counselors. I love when counselors see coaches. We all need this team of people around us, and counseling gives us a very different experience than coaching does, and they're all beneficial and useful to us as long as we are in a place to be able to utilize them. And if we're not, that's okay. That doesn't mean we won't be in the future. So thank you for the work that you are doing, because it, like you said, it can feel just so isolating, and being able to hear that no, we're not alone is so important. So thank you so much for being here, Carrie. This has been great.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the You Need a Counselor podcast. We are so grateful that you are here. Now, we want to hear from you. Text us or give us a call at 515-650-3231. You can also find the You Need a Counselor podcast on Facebook and Instagram. If you've enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to like, review, and comment, as all of these things help others to find and benefit from this podcast as well. If you're in the state of Iowa and interested in mental health counseling or behavioral health intervention services, give us a call at 1-800-531-4236. And if you're a provider seeking play therapy CEUs, you can find us at patreon.com/YouNeedATraining. We'll see you for the next episode, Sunday at 5.